Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Happenings Here. That's good enough. This location, this piece of space, which has, all this, I was going to try to say it in their jargon, little bent links and chains or something, or compressions in ether, or whatever, jellyfish. Yeah, billions and billions of jellyfish are now talking to you. Ugh. Well, whatever. Anyway, so I am currently in this circumstance where there's the assholes to the right of me and assholes to the left of me. And they're, different kinds of asshole, of course. Whatever. Gremlins and, I don't know. Doesn't matter how we characterize them, I suppose. Except it's pacifist, I don't know, unrealistic, illogical, wishy-washy, mushy, hope kind of people, and psychotics. Yeah, they switch sides, obviously. There's some of these and those, and some of those and these. Anyway, it's nothing. I have nothing to do with any of this crap. Frankly, it's none of my business what everybody else wishes to do with their time. The only part that bothers me is, what you're getting, what's associated with you, or what is somehow implies a connection. Like I've endorsed something, or I'm supporting something, or I'm defending something, which I'm not. So lots of false accusations made by all kinds of people. The pacifist types are implying that I've somehow had conversations or somehow stimulated or provoked somebody to threaten to kill their girlfriend and their family and, whatever, the bad man down the street. They have no evidence for any of these communications. I've never done anything to support anybody in their insanities in any way. So they just make these accusations. And likewise, other people making accusations about I stole my philosophy from somebody else, or how somehow its logical grounding is in somebody else's arguments. From where exactly were those? Is there any evidence of that? No evidence. So they just make all these accusations, and I'm supposed to debate these people in some way. All these false accusers. I'm supposed to in some way be willing to have a conversation with them and talk about all the, just me defending against whatever lie they can make up today. Why would I want to do that? Why would I waste my time doing that? Even the whole idea of a debate, again, conversational videos, I don't really have much interest, frankly. I mean, I think it's, I haven't heard any counter argument at all that somehow this medium can't be used to make counter arguments. That I don't have to actually have an interaction with somebody to argue what they're saying. It's really easy. I just play the clips and say, okay, this is where I disagree. And I can either do that, obviously, honestly or dishonestly. I mean, yes, some people don't play people's videos. Some people don't take the argument. They just, quote mine the video, find the little piece they want to make fun of, and pretend they've destroyed the entire argument because they played a clip of the video where the guy's making a funny face, pointing his finger, doing something. Just people, if they're not smart enough to figure out that that's cheating, fine. I don't have anything to say. They don't think Photoshop is cheating. They love it when somebody makes an argument from Photoshop. I mean, this works with people. I think obviously with people that have a little bit of intelligence to say, gee, I don't want my guys using those cheap tactics. I mean, they should be able to make an argument, stand up. They shouldn't have to, paint Hitler mustaches on Trump or some other kind of crap. They should be able to make the argument. I mean, his bad hair day or something. They always have to use some sort of cheat instead of just making a straight up argument. So I don't have much appreciation for any of that kind of crap. The only time I've ever resorted to it was to point out how cheap it is and how easy it is. In reaction to other people's attempts. It's a really easy way to make an argument from quote mine. It's just, like I said, just shows no integrity, that's all. So anyway, so I'm going to play this piece of shit video from the piece of shit. I don't know why anybody's interacting with him at all. I don't know why they're listening to his videos. I mean, he's clearly an enemy of antinatalism. I mean, he can't deal with the fact that somebody might disagree with him, and so anyone who disagrees with him is a target, and that's just totally impractical. I mean, it's clearly on the record. I had nothing against the pacifist antinatalist, the wimpy, girly antinatalist. Like, I had nothing against them. I had no fight with them. They brought the fight to me. I mean, they said somehow they're now free to put words in my mouth and accuse me of crimes. And they're not, in my opinion. That's just bullshit. So they're the one who first blood and all that kind of crap. There's a point I'll take so much of it and then I'll say fuck you. Okay, so I'm in the mood to say fuck you, so I'll probably say it a few times. I don't need them. They don't have to need me either. We can be quite irrelevant to each other. I don't think it's practical, okay, to be for anything if your solution is impractical, right? There's no point in it. There's no point in saying I'm against the Republicans when your democratic solution is irrational and nonsensical. Your opposition is useless. That's the truth of it, okay? Unless you have a real solution to a problem, there's no point in fighting the problem. It wasn't like, mothers who don't drunk drive, right? That's not what they call themselves. Mothers who don't drunk drive. Yeah, we don't drink and drive. You can go ahead and do it, but we don't do it. And these pacifists seem like they want to be, I don't rape, but I'm not going to stop anybody else from raping. It doesn't make any sense at all. They think they can win the war, without having to fire a shot. Well, that isn't going to happen, silly people. So this guy keeps harping on this subject of consent as if it's not some sort of valid fundamental part of being a civilized human or a civilized elephant or a civilized anything. Anything civilized is going to understand this concept of consent. It's fundamental to mitigating risk and creating justification. So if you want to justify imposing a risk, you do it with consent. Okay, so this is called common law. I mean, it goes back thousands of years, this idea of a handshake and consent. And, well, you agreed to plant the tree. If the tree falls on your house, you agreed that we would have a tree between our houses, so it's not my fault the wind blew the wrong way, blah, 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 blah. So it's a fundamental function of understanding imposing and justification for imposing. So we know that there's a risk. This is what we're talking about. Now, people will argue about how substantial this risk is, but I think things like ALS and other disasters that can happen, being born with your brain stuck to your skull and all kinds of other defects, clearly indicates it's a substantial, catastrophic risk to some victims. I mean, some victims are really going to pay a very high price. And they can't get this thing called consent, is the simple argument. Not that I'm arguing that they have some obligation to go to non-existence, okay, and ask the non-existent, okay, for their consent to become the existent. I'm clearly not making that argument, but, liars and fools will somehow be able to construe that through their lying and foolery. Okay, you have to be a complete idiot to think I'm arguing that. So I'm clearly not, and yet they keep arguing as if that's what I'm saying. No, I'm saying if you don't have this, okay, it's a fundamental justification for imposing risk. So I've used analogies. If my neighbors agree to give me their money, I'm going to Las Vegas, and I say, hey, you want me to do some gambling for you? They give me their money. They've consented to me to go to Las Vegas and perhaps lose their money. Enjoy the risk, okay? And they've agreed to the risk. They've consented to it. So now the risk goes away. The risk doesn't exist anymore once you've consented to it. Okay, so no problem. Now if I steal their money, then I have a justification burden. Okay, the burden's still there. I have to justify now what I'm going to be doing, which appears to have a risk tied to it. Now, to have justification for taking their money, have to have something called certainty. I have to be so certain this risk doesn't exist. It's a fallacy, okay? They fooled you, it doesn't really exist. That's the only thing I can use as now a weapon to create justification for my imposition. That's it. So that's the logical argument. It's made out of these words, okay? And these concepts have been around thousands of years and shouldn't in any way confuse anyone. Consent is a fundamental way you justify imposing risk. It's the only way, frankly, because this certainty thing you just can't have. You can't have it like when you're going to have a school event and the children are all going to go to some place and they're going to get indoctrinated by museums or something, and they're going to have, sex on the altar or some cathedral or something because you're taking a risk. They're going in some ratty bus to some ratty place and going to have some ratty experience. So the parents have to consent. Otherwise, the school has to have a justification for imposing the risk. And they're suable and all of that crap. I mean, this is a concept that's been around a long, long time. It really shouldn't be confusing anyone. So the simple argument for the antinatalist is, and I think one of the most decisive arguments against procreation, is that there is no way to get consent. So the justification has to come from you understanding the risk so well and so completely that you've eliminated it. It doesn't exist anymore somehow. And you can only do that by having some kind of thing, some kind of justification for a certainty. Now, if you're a religious kook and you say some kind of religious kookery, Jesus told me it's okay to take their money, obviously we put you in the nut house, right? I mean, that's just kind of so irrational. So there is no justification for having children because you can't in any way explain away the risk. You can't explain how you fixed it, how you've handled it, how the victim doesn't have some right to sue, okay? How the victim, where the victim said in any circumstance, yes, go ahead, I'd like to be born to you assholes, and I would like to have ALS, and I'd like to die when I'm 21 years old, choking on my own saliva. Well, you don't have that contract, and that's key for you not to be a horrible imposer, to be committing a horrible crime against somebody else's unwillingness to live by your risk standards. Nobody has a right to tell somebody else the risk is okay. I don't mind if it happens to me. Yeah, we all know that. So this isn't complicated, and it's a decisive argument against the arrogance of procreation. Anyway. And this asshole can't understand that. This idiot.
Welcome back, YouTube, to another live stream and video recording for afterwards. So I predicted...
Another pile of lies and bullshit. He predicted something. Ooh. I can't wait.
That amendment would be getting a huge volume of issues from these people that he's just...
There's no huge volume of issues, and they're real issues for people, apparently, okay? I mean, I've pointed out how... there's lots of people that love cats, and they think the problem is somehow being addressed somewhere, and they think the resources are being rationally spent. And I point out how, no, they're not. And the options are horrible, and what you're doing with your love is just torturing cats, okay? You think love means I impose surgery, I keep you in cages, I do all kinds of trauma and handling, and I do all kinds of... it's almost, what do they call that? Interventions. I take a feral cat and I force it to learn how to be civilized. Oh, not traumatic at all. They're imposing a whole bunch of harm, and they have this delusion that it's all okay. Well, yes, they have that belief. I have an opposite belief, so yes, we have a disagreement, but at least that's a rational disagreement, unlike your silly arguments where you put words in my mouth and pretend I said things I have never said, and then make these insane accusations about my character and where the hell I've gotten my philosophy from, even though I've explained it plainly. Fuck you. Even though there's a whole record of videos, thousands of them. You piece of shit.
Whimsically choosing to trust out of nowhere.
So again, trust how? What did I put in their hands? What exactly did I do to demonstrate that I had any confidence that the, generation, whatever it is, was, fully competent to integrate any kind of complex philosophy into their video game psychology? Oh, there's absolutely no demonstration I could give a shit.
Because he just places his trust in horrible places. He just doesn't.
So more nonsense. So there's no evidence I placed any trust in anything. Okay, so this is just such horse shit, right? Where's your evidence of me trusting somebody? Where's your documentation of the trust I've put in anything or anyone? Now, there are a few people like Old Fan and blah, 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 and in no way have I been sabotaged or ruined by these people at all. So you're full of shit. Again, you're making accusations for which you have no evidence. That's called lying. Because you don't have any evidence.
Know what the fuck he's doing in any way, shape, or form. It was also it was cute. He thought he understood what a double standard was in his most recent video, and
so more of this nonsense, right? A double standard is called hypocrisy. I know what that word is. But I know what lunatic and idiot are too, and that's everything you're demonstrating. You're making completely irrational arguments, and you're just a menace. You're just human gone really bad.
Not only did he have no clue what the fuck a double standard was for the last 12 fucking years, but he's openly...
So what's the evidence? Where's the evidence of this? What is this accusation even based on? I haven't watched this video. I don't know what the fuck he's saying. But what the fuck is this accusation? I don't know what a hypocrite is, and somehow I'm a hypocrite. Where's the evidence of that?
In response to me showing that it was a double standard and also begging the question.
What's begging what question? Again, you're the one playing this game that somehow I have to worry about something called begging the question, or red herring, or straw man, when you haven't indicated I'm guilty of any of these crimes at all. I haven't begged any question, and I haven't avoided any question, and that's a reasonable question. You can't make, you want me to watch an hour and 22 minutes of you lying, and I'm supposed to find that worth my time to extract out of it whatever portion of this is some real argument which none of your mob or your people have been able to articulate in any kind of rational language. What exactly is your fucking problem, asshole? I don't even know what the fuck you're arguing with except this consent thing, which was ludicrous. You think I want you to get consent from things that don't exist. No, that's not my claim, retard.
Question fallacy when he puts forward the impossibility of consent as...
So, again, see, I say consent is impossible. Those words came out of my mouth numerous times. You can't get consent. That means something because most justification for imposing risk, the way most 99% of the risk imposed in the world today is imposed through acquiring consent. It's a fundamental way you acquire justification for imposing risk. Idiot.
being a solid argument for antinatalism and effilism.
Yes, I think it's incredibly solid that they don't have justification because they can't get the biggest and mainest source of justification, which is consent. Because they can't get it, they're stuck with having to create this risk doesn't exist. Risk is mitigated by some other value. Risk goes away. They have to make the risk disappear. And the only way they can do that is through certainty. That's how you get rid of risk, right? Risk means that there's a probability, a chance, an opportunity for something to happen. Various things can happen. You have to eliminate that variability by saying, I'm certain it's going to be okay. Oh, fuck. Well, let's jump ahead. I don't know. I'm not playing an hour and a half of this shit.
consent of people that are, burning alive in a building. Are you going to ask for their consent?
So again, he keeps saying it as if I ever suggested you go and get consent. Like there's some, like the natalists should go get consent. No, my argument was simply they can't get it, and it's fundamental to justification for imposition. Where are you not connecting these ABC dots, you fucking dumb cunt? Alright, so he's still on this subject.
So, you're late. What's Gary do now? It's only a 5-minute video, so you can rewatch it. Alright, I don't have to explain it all to you. Actually, why not? Because you probably make a bunch of invalid rebuts, right?
What 5-minute video? Where did you make a 5-minute video?
And then I'll just crush those really quickly. You tend to do that a lot. So, Gary...
So just more accusations. Again, see, somebody says I should want to debate this fucking asshole. Why? What would I debate except how big a fucking liar he is? So let's just go through all his lies, and then we can just debate his lies over and over, and I'll say, where's your evidence for that? And he won't have any.
He's now being betrayed by the people that he trusted with a bunch of information about...
So again, I trusted somebody with information. Fucking lie. I've trusted nobody with any information. So there's absolutely... You could make every one of my emails public. You could make every one... All this stuff. I do nothing privately. There's just about zero private information. Now, there's a few people I contact and say, I'm sorry about your circumstance, blah, 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 blah. You know, they have some personal thing. That's it. There is nothing behind the scenes. There is no behind the amendum scenes. No. It doesn't exist, liar. You're a fucking liar.
Me, a couple months ago, for no other reason other than I highlighted and debunked his dumbass physics and his dumbass imposition.
All right, well, he certainly hasn't done the physics argument. Now, could you make a video specifically on the subject of physics where you make a physics argument of some kind? You haven't touched any of my physics, you lying sack of shit. Again, what physics argument has he made about anything in the physical, like anything about how magnets work, or how charge works, or how momentum is transferred through the universe? Where has he made a single physics argument?
Argument. And highlighted that it would be getting a huge issues later on, predicted that it would be, and it did, with numerous different YouTube channels now have come out with content destroying the imposition argument.
Where is that? What's okay? Sorry, imposition isn't an argument against imposing risk. So the idea that it is imposing, when you impose risk on something, that you have to have a justification to do that. You have to have a reasoned theory of how it's okay. That's not a good argument against having babies. What? God, how clueless can you be?
Waiting antinatalists on the spot in street debates and crushing what they're saying and getting nothing but valid, responses from everybody.
Well, wherever this is, right? This fantasy of his. Okay, and valid responses from who? Again, I don't know. There are people who are obviously feeding you, but I don't think they're antinatalists, frankly. You're an enemy of antinatalism now. That's all you are. The only people who could possibly be feeding you are people who don't want to really end the horror and the suffering. They have some other agenda. So
what do you not understand about that, David? Do you think that the imposition argument is valid? Do you think that Gary's physics is good? What do you think?
So again, how this asshole thinks he knows something about physics? It's amazing. Just fucking amazing. So underqualified.
Your thing, David, anymore? You used to contest both the physics thing and the imposition argument somehow being a solid piece of argumentation to put forward. Is there anybody else in here that wants to put that shit forward? And why do you want...
So you're going to argue with people who barely understand themselves. Great, that's fantastic. I mean, I'm sorry to say, physics is a subject you really have to do some work to be able to be in the competition, so to speak, to even be in the game. It's like other skills, like playing piano or something. You can't just show up at a group full of piano players and start just, I don't know how to play the piano, but I'll tell you guys what piano playing is. No, it's not one of those kind of things. You just can't get away with that horse shit. You have to have some kind of knowledge. You have to spend some time understanding the experiments and understanding the evidence. And where's any evidence that you've done one day of that, let alone hundreds of days of that? You're just so underqualified, it's pathetic. All right, let's see, what does it say? I'm late. What's Gary do now? So, this is a smart guy. What's Gary do now? David the Door. I'd rather not contest you on his physics right now. Yeah, well, like you could do it anyway. Why are you talking to him? I mean, I'd like to know that answer. Why don't you, he's probably blocked on my channel. I never even heard of this David the Door. I mean, these assholes don't even have reasonable screen names. They don't produce any content, and he's being driven by their, commentary. Brilliant strategy. Yeah, that's the real world.
Want to do that?
Yeah, pigs.
Being tested. You don't think that testing is good for? Let me just ask you this, David. You could just say yes or no. Do you think that testing is important, and do you understand that? Do you think that testing is important? One, just go ahead. Do you think that testing is a part of science and is science? It is science. If you can't claim something is true without testing.
Well, again, how do you test? You can't take a picture of photons, idiot. All you have is the experiments. So that's all you have. You can call those tests if you want, but that's all you have. And theories, multiple theories can explain something. And the real test is a logical test. You have to logically test, well, what theory has more moving parts? That's Occam's razor is a test for a theory, right? Not just physics, but philosophy. All kinds of different theories can be subjected to the test. Is it more complete and is it simpler? Those are the tests. And I'd argue you have zero evidence that my theory doesn't pass those tests. That is, it explains the existing tests, the experiments, and it does so simpler. Win. For my side. So why don't you show where my theory's less complete? Why don't you show how it doesn't explain how magnets work? That their theory is better. Why don't you explain how a magnet works by conventional physics? Why don't you try to do that, stupid fuck, before you make accusations you can't defend?
Do you understand that?
Do you understand that? Huh? Do you? Do you? Oh, great content.
How do you do it, first of all? And then why do you do it after?
It's got to get paid for this shit. Desperate.
As well. Can you please explain? Do you think he has a valid hypothesis when there's no test? Or do you just trust in him?
So again, there are plenty of tests. I'm pointing out the test. That's what the videos are. Is me showing the two-slit experiment. Me showing, explaining how an interferometer actually works. What a beam splitter actually is and what it's actually doing. So that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm showing how my theory passed the test. Their theory, I'm showing, doesn't pass the test, like with the diffraction grating pushing images to the different locations. Clearly, you can't randomize information that's producing an image. If I randomize the pixels on my computer screen, there won't be any images there anymore, will there? So they're obviously not produced by a random mechanism.
I'm getting a lot of people. I've been getting a couple people that just will claim that they don't understand any of the arguments that Gary's putting forward. They can't regurgitate it back, but they trust in him. They trust in him.
Well, who cares? Again, so that's your argument. It's my fault that people are sycophants. You have them, apparently. You have this David the Door guy who finds you interesting enough to communicate with. No, I don't understand it. Now I'm supposed to force you to account for their behavior. So everyone who I can find who agrees with you, you're responsible for everything they say. I don't think that would be a fair standard. Do you want to be a non-hypocrite and say that's okay? Yes. Judge me based on the spammy crap heads that comment on my videos. That's where I'll go to find out who you are. Yeah, that would be kind of silly too, wouldn't it?
The physics messiah, the blue-eyed.
All right, so that's really so fucking relevant, right? I should debate some asshole who can't make an argument more sophisticated than this.
Right? I had somebody tell me the other day that they would rather burn alive in their house than consent for someone else to come in and help them. Okay, well, that's fine about you, dickhead. But what about the person that would be does want to get saved, and then they don't get saved because all of a sudden we don't have the consent of the person that we're trying to save? It's just really, really dumb. It gets really dumb really fast.
So again, more just a complete perversion of anything I've ever said on the subject of consent. I've never said you need to get the consent that you're going to, like, well, I might have said you need consent, but I'm not saying you can get the consent, okay? This isn't a subject about getting consent. The subject is they can't get it. And it's one of the fundamental ways you create justification for imposing risk. And again, it's about imposing a risk of a negative.
This is the reason why this guy has to avoid everything, right, that I'm doing and saying, because he can't even...
Yeah, I'm avoiding it. You don't make a coherent argument. And again, why would I'm avoiding it, what? In the sense that I have no interest in spending 2 hours explaining how everything you're saying is a fucking lie. Yeah, right. I should just be subjected to your made-up stories. No, I have no obligation to be subjected to that. So if you can't make a respectful argument, why should I pay any fucking attention, you fucking pedophile? He does look like one, right? I mean, right there? Yeah, all over the place, right? I proved it, didn't I? By bringing up the word, by saying it, didn't I prove it? You all believe it now, don't you? You're all sort of seeing it, right? Now that I've brought up the subject, you sort of see it in his eyes, right? He has those dead shark eyes. You know, looking to exploit something, that's all. How can I fucking get mine? Yeah, you can see it.
Gauge it anymore because it's just been so crushed. I have no concern. This is just ridiculous at this point. To take him seriously as a human anymore. To watch his...
So what is all this crap? You know, it's just what. That's not some sort of preposterous, insane exaggeration. That's not just too silly for even a conversation. Again, I'm supposed to have a conversation with an asshole who says something that ridiculous. Yeah, just amazing. Well, I mean, you know, I probably shouldn't do this video because it's unfair to retards. You know.
Gary, that they would get into conflict, didn't I? I predicted it.
You predicted what? What's the huge fallout? Where's my world shaken? Oh, that's right. It's not at all. Except for the fact that yes, I have to have a conversation with, you know, the simple-minded who think there's perfect solutions to all problems. Just give everybody everything, and everything will be just fine.
Oh man, I predicted the exact ways that it was going to happen and everything too.
Yeah, did you predict what? Am I on fire or something? What did you predict the consequence was? That I would be what exactly? I would be impacted how? How would anything at all change in my life at all? Where did anything change? Can you point out where anything at all changed? Any single item in my existence changed? Any quantum fluctuation, even just a quantum fluctuation? Can you find the quantum fluctuation that took place? Oh no, you can't, because it doesn't exist, retard.
Placing trust in complete fucking lunatic.
Okay, so again, trust in what way? Yo, how exactly? I mean, I'd already made videos, right? I mean, let's just say the podcast thing. I had already made videos pointing out I wasn't too thrilled with the podcast, right? I mean, it's not my style of antinatalism. I mean, I had talked to the Guy McPherson thing, you know, the whole vehement subject. It's obviously completely anti anything. I mean, the values are completely inverted. he'd never be an ally of mine. And he said it right in his own statement, that, well, if it came to that, I wouldn't be on your side, right? So, I mean, there's absolutely no common interest, really, besides the short-term interest. And the short-term interests have nothing to do with the long-term gain of finishing the job. So, I mean, the fact that it's like the Russians and the United States being allied against Hitler, You knew this relationship wasn't real. It wasn't for any good purpose. It was just circumstantial. We have nothing in common. And yes, I don't have anything in common with antinatalists who are waiting for fairy tale happily ever after solutions. They're just deluded, silly people.
People that don't want to run in the opposite direction rather than defend their fucking arguments. And then they will just, instead of defending their arguments, they just laden it all.
Well, who cares about all that crap? Fortunately, I don't involve myself in all of those silly arguments. Especially about a circumstance where we're not even at yet. And then just to sit there and waste time speculating about the 9 million different ways you can write the last 10 days, story. Lots of ways the last 10 days can go.
And fucking slander and libel. That's how they try to do stuff. So.
Oh, and your whole fucking every one of your videos is just constant. That's all you do is lie and exaggerate and quote mine and buffoon. You don't do anything else. There's no rational arguments. Again, you're sitting here lying, saying that somewhere I suggested we should go get consent. And it's no problem now. Now you can have babies, but you got consent. I never suggested you can do it. Or that's the solution. The solution is to recognize that you can't fix the risk. Because if you're certain there's no risk, you're insane. Plainly. So there is no solution. The risk exists, the imposition is real, and it's a violation of decency. It's a fucking rape.
Wicked fatigue. Weren't you were there, weren't you? Yeah, there you go. So he says, yeah, superhuman dance, you predicted this all happening and warned them all. Yep, I did. So, there you go. There's one person. So.
You warned me about the existence of diversity. I didn't know diversity existed. I didn't know people had diverse opinions and were in causes for diverse reasons. As I've just stated, I would not get along with 98% of people who want to save feral cats from horror. 98% of them want some magical solution. They don't want to do the simplest thing, which is just put them to sleep and solve the problem. No, instead they want to pretend it's not a real problem and a real tragedy doesn't exist. And they'll do it by torturing cats. What a surprise. Humans come up with dumb answers. Ugh, shit.
Huge doubts into it. But when they hide it under all these implications and everything, it really can get under the radar. But it's dishonest, and it's not a solid position to start from. The most solid position to start from would be if Gary was competent enough to study epistemology, to study these other fields.
This is just so silly, right? I'm making the argument from the deepest kind of fundamental, elemental arguments, okay, from facts of the universe. We're determined. We're robots. Our values are conditioned. We have the intelligence to know our conditioning sucks. We can say things like, I'm an asshole, and we can actually believe it and understand it and say, yes, okay, I have impulses that are completely destructive and selfish and irrational. And that the only thing I have to protect the world from those things is the fact that I can know those things. And I can have knowledge of them. So there's no links missing in the chain of reasoning. The chain of reasoning covers the logical circumstance, just like the chain of reasoning of my argument about what an imposition is, risk, how you justify it through either one of these simple mechanisms. Either you justify it by saying, the risk doesn't really exist because I know I'm going to roll the dice and the dice are going to come up too. Okay, they're not going to obey any probability rules.
That have come about over the course of human history here, and to like try to figure out how to communicate this thing, he would have formulated the questions. Because if you can't ask the right questions, then how are you going to get the right answers? But
So more nonsense, more gibberish. What is this? The road to philosophical enlightenment by buffoon. Shit for brain, lying, compulsive liar. No, sorry, no sale. You have the right answers. No, you don't.
he didn't do that. Over years and years and years, he never wrote down the right questions. He asked.
So why don't you have you must have something like that. Can't you just quote it? Can't you quote like the text of these irrational, inconsistent with logical progression arguments I've made? Why can't you quote any of them, you liar?
Very incompetent questions that are very open-ended, that require him to become like an emotional basket case and really highly think of himself, even though it's not warranted in any way, shape, or form.
So, what were accusations based on what? Again, I should defend these accusations that I think too much of myself, blah, 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 blah. Now, I've made arguments that, I suck, but most of you people suck even more. You're really enabled. Really handy capable.
Work on, rather than like giving it what it needs, which is like sugar, carbohydrate specifically coming from whole plant foods. Would be the most coherent thing to do. Fruit, vegetables, rice, pasta, corn, lentils, no oil, no sodium. You'll feel less bad. So that's 2%. If you follow that 2%, that's a less bad world for you. Would you ever get any information like that from Gary and Men Cunt?
Yeah, why would I bother with this bullshit? I've given people diet information. I've pointed out how your stomach's full of acid. It just turns all of it into actually shit. Okay, and all it does is process small molecules. So you can eat all the protein you want, but you're not going to absorb anything called a protein. Okay, you're going to absorb things called amino acids, and most of them are going to look like carbohydrates, frankly, in the end. So yes, it all kind of runs on sugar, okay, and acetone, I think, or something. The brain runs a little different than the rest of the body. But it's just looking for little tiny molecules in the end, the little tiny ones it's going to break everything into. And it just needs some of the amino acids to build its own proteins and its own other more complex compounds. So it's really just a thing that it slices and dices everything you eat. So you're not really what you eat, okay? It's just doesn't really work that way, okay? You eat fat, it doesn't make fat. It just doesn't work that way. Fat is made into sugar, and the sugar is what makes your fat cells fatter. But whatever. So it's another lie. I have given people advice. I said, you want to lose weight? Guess what? Okay, it's all about calories and metabolism. So if you have a slow metabolism and you're eating a lot of calories, guess what? Your body has lots of time to suck all the crap out of it, and you're going to end up gaining weight. But if your metabolism is fat, that is, you poo every fucking twice a day or something, well, then you can afford to eat a lot more shit. And it doesn't matter because you won't absorb it. Yeah, people eat giant Big Macs and shit, and it has 1,500 calories. Guess what? They only really absorb 300. Ugh. Whatever. Fuck you. Yeah, my channel's not devoted for, this is how your life can be better. I'm not doing that, asshole.
The religious leader, holy be thy name. Fuck no, you wouldn't.
So again, this whole, any indication that there's anything religious in my philosophy is just absolute nonsense, or that I say anything like, trust me, I know, pay attention to me, obey my rules, blah, 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 blah. None of that takes place without a complete rational argument of why you should do whatever you're going to do. So there's just nothing. I never tell anybody dogmatically like this asshole just did. Well, he didn't even do it because he didn't say anything. Well, you get your carbohydrates in your bread, just no oil. For whatever. He's anti-oil for some reason.
Let alone coherent arguments for antinatalism and afflism that are going to work in on a debate scale, on a large debate scale, tried and true, tested.
And you've been tested by what? So again, I've had arguments with people, and I've certainly debated in the sense that I've made video responses to what I consider to be bad arguments, and those arguments are generally accepted by people who can understand them. But that's all I can do. Now, you're saying you're the expert at it. I haven't seen any evidence of that. I haven't seen your decisive victory anywhere, except in your own, what you say. You say you won. Nothing else says so.
Not happening. Because that's not what the guy does. He's a religious leader, as is in the title. So
again, another accusation that there's some commonality between any religion on earth and what I'm saying. So I would argue it's exactly the opposite, that I'm doing the evolution thing. I'm just showing you the evidence that indicates, no, there's no reason to believe in a God. There's no reason to believe any of those made-up stories about the Hansel and Gretel or the quantum mechanics or the entanglement or the other bullshit. I'm just pointing out how you have no evidence to believe that, and I can give you a perfectly reasonable argument about how things are connected.
You look fresh, yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not really even fresh right now. I just got done shoveling mulch all day. I just trimmed my beard a little bit, and it makes me look probably a couple years younger just because there's...
Ugh, whatever. You still look pudgy to me.
Go on, go outside. That's one thing.
Great. More commercials.
Thing our phones don't do particularly good yet is speaking Asian languages. All the Latin dumbassery that you can't even remotely control. They won't listen. So you can't really sit there and be worried about crap like that. You just got to show up consistently, and that's what I'm going to do. So...
Yeah, I mean, clearly your objective is different. You're trying to finance your life with these videos, which is kind of tacky. Blah, 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 blah.
To confirm his theory as contradicting the other tests that have taken place. So...
Where? So again, no evidence. Just more accusations with absolutely no evidence. And again, people think I have some obligation to debate a person who makes accusations with no evidence. So again, if I accuse you of being a pedophile, David, it's okay with you. I can just make whole videos about all kinds of stuff, and I'll just make it up. I'll just make up accusations and then force you to explain how you're not guilty of the accusation. I mean, it's insane. It's just insane. There's no more. That's all you need to say.
Being true and then, contradicting all of the modern physics is what it would have to do.
Yes, and it does all of that. That's exactly why it's thousands of videos. But I mean, it's the newer videos are more and more on the subject. They're in subject videos, and you can't contend a single argument made in them. So go watch the magnetism video and explain to me how it doesn't fit the evidence completely.
He doesn't have anything that contests and contradicts the tests that have already taken place.
All right, so again, these are lies, okay? I mean, I have pointed out experiments that can be done, all right, that haven't. Certainly using the space technology to redo the Eddington experiment is no huge challenge. And I've pointed out how even in their existing theory there are these anomalies for which they have no explanation. The two-slit experiment creates two patterns, not consistent with their theory. The mathematics doesn't actually fit. It doesn't produce accurate description of the pattern that's actually produced. And then in the multi-slit, I've pointed out how images are actually projected at the locations. And they have no theory that can explain that. Their wave interference theory can't do that.
One claim that is testable is that his force bits do not exceed light speed. Okay, so...
Well, whatever. I mean, obviously any theory where you propose something that there's no evidence it exists, that is something moving faster than the speed of light. There's just no evidence of any such thing. So any theory that proposes it would be, on its face, unlikely to be accurate. But again, I'll go back to the interferometer, right? Why don't you explain how the interferometer works? Why don't you explain to me how a beam splitter works? They say one thing. I've pointed out how it can't be true. It's theoretically impossible to use a half-silvered mirror to create two equal beams. It's impossible. Theoretically impossible. How do you answer that claim? Why don't you show how it's theoretically possible for light to travel through little slits of mirror without being diffracted? Explain how it's possible for that to happen.
No, that there's no particles that have ever been measured exceed light speed yet that have been documented, other than the ones that they think like gravitational waves and neutrinos and all that stuff.
So he just demonstrated how he doesn't know shit about the subject, right? Nobody asserting the existence of gravitational waves, they're asserting exactly the same thing, that they do travel exactly the speed of light. So again, he's just false on the face. He's making another false assertion based on his ignorance.
But yeah, so and they have tests that have measured that stuff.
So again, just keep saying things for which you're totally unqualified to assert. You're completely ignorant on the subject, and yet you're just talking out of your ass. And worse, you're talking about other people making accusations that you can't defend. I mean, what's more despicable in terms of human behavior than this kind of just, gratuitous fucking lying?
Can't do that. It's not logical at all. You're claiming to know something. So you asking the questions is idiotic. Gary is claiming to know something. That means you can just ask, how do you know?
And where in any video have I not answered those questions? Where have I asserted I know something without explaining exactly why I believe it? Where? Do you have any evidence of that? No. And you're a liar. A fucking liar.
Constantly. You don't think you should have to defend how you know? Well, that makes you a religious fuck.
Okay, so I'll say it again. He has zero evidence. There's zero evidence in my thousands, 10,000 videos. You won't find one fucking video where I ever assert I know something. I know it from special reasons. Every fucking conclusion, every fucking assertion I've ever made is always defended with reasoning. Always.
Period. It's the same thing as the religious people claiming that they're cause and effect, therefore God, and then you ask them for a reason, and they say cause and effect, therefore God, and you're like, so what caused and affected your God?
So how is any assertion I'm making comparable to that? Where do I give the because answer? Where? Except in maybe the physics argument, in the sense that you can't go to the zero. I can't tell you what happened 16 trillion years ago to create the first electron. Yeah, but I'll assert electrons exist. And that's all. We've proven they exist. They are something. It's a real thing with real properties. Okay? Period. All right? And that's the premise from which all rational argument about physics has to take place, is in the rational realm of accepting the existence of something called an electron that's clearly different than space around it, and a proton and a neutron. Those things are quite certainly real.
It's the same thing as claiming something along the lines of nothing and nothing can't become something or any of that stuff, right? So he connects nothing I've ever said to these assertions. So no claim demonstrated to be from religion. Understand, religion's a whole complex theory, in the sense they're proposing the existence of a whole complex form of thinking machine, some infinite knowledge God thing, whatever the fuck that would be. A whole complex thing poofed out of nothing. That's their assertion. My assertion is it would appear that the universe creates the matter in it through some process. I would claim it's probably an evolution, that the whole universe evolves into its current form. That would be contradicting modern physics. Do you get what I'm saying? Because nothing else exceeds light speed. So if nothing else exceeds light speed, then you have what's called an unfalsifiable claim. And this is extremely...
So we've already done this falsifiable claim nonsense, all right? So I made a counter argument saying this is a false argument. Everything has to be defended by reasoning and evidence. And some subjects, everybody has to work with a scant amount of evidence. There is no special place to go get more evidence. We just have a certain amount of it. And the competition is to come up with the best, most reasonable theory out of the pieces of evidence that exist. And again, Occam's razor, the explanation that has the fewest complications and is more complete in its explanation of the evidence, is a good bet at being the better answer.
Poor science. This is like the same thing as claiming when religious people claim that evolution is evident in the Bible because of X, X, and X verse. Or the Bible predicts evolution.
Well, it obviously doesn't predict a billion-year-old planet, so this is a moot conversation also. Oh, shit. So again, this cheap, shitty accusation that there's any religious component. Again, there's no special creation. I don't say, and then God said, blah, blah. There's none of that. There's absolutely nothing dogmatically stated from, you have to believe. No. There's just me pointing out there's certain logical premises, electron, proton, neutron. We know that these atoms are capable of bonding with each other. We know some physical facts. That's it. That's the premise. Yeah, I do not speculate on where the electron comes from.
This is the same thing. It can't be falsified, and it also can't be proven as true. So it's
So it's a lie, just an overt lie. It's easily falsified by a piece of evidence. I'm arguing, okay, that they never proved that light is bent by gravity. So I'm arguing that there's no evidence. There's no hard evidence stating that it is, and there's no reason to believe it is. And there's especially no reason to believe it's bent twice as much as Einstein changed the universe to mean. Do you actually think there's good evidence indicating that light is bent twice as much as every other kind of form of matter or energy in the universe? That only a photon, is this special thing, is bent twice as much by gravity? Do you think there's good reason to believe that? That's their assertion. That's their dogma.
Falsifiable, so there's no way to contradict it, and there's no way to confirm it. So it's what's called...
All there is evidence. And again, so cite the evidence with which my theory is incompatible. That's your obligation. So cite the hard evidence that you think is incompatible. Now, obviously, I don't think they saw gravitational waves because, like Einstein, I understand them. There's not enough energy. There's no way we could ever detect these things because there wouldn't be nearly enough energy to ever get here. So they invented a special new Einstein theory, right? They invented a new theory where they convert actual matter into bent space. Now, nobody ever tested the theory. Nobody ever did an experiment. And there's absolutely no reason to believe it except it makes it possible for them to see something that was impossible to see. So now they can claim we did it. So you fall for that. You think that's good science. I think that's as bad a science as you can get. I mean, it is just so circular. It's pathetically bad science. And you're defending it how? By citing what evidence? Again, where have you ever been shown that this LIGO thing can measure 1/10,000th of the dimensions of a proton? Where have they done the experiment showing they can detect that small a distance? Oh, the evidence is they said we did it. There's no evidence other than them saying we did it. Amazing asshole.
And consent are not the same things or justified by the same things. So you're claiming that you're implying through, so you're claiming through an implication that you have a value for consent, and then you aren't...
So again, the value for consent is built into the structure of logic. Consent is one of the ways you create justification, again. And the argument isn't that you have to manufacture the consent out of something else or you have to do something to create... No, the argument simply is you can't get it. You have no access to one of the main ways you justify imposing risk. So without that main way to justify imposing risk, you're stuck with the secondary way, which is you have to know you're absolutely right and everything you do is going to turn out just fine. You have to be Dr. Frankenstein, and you have to be certain for some reason that there's no possibility your experiment's going to go wrong. And that is impossible. So clearly, imposition is in play as an accusation. You have no right to impose the risk because you neither have consent nor a rational justification. Explaining how the risk isn't a real risk, that there's no risk, that even if it comes out the worst possible case, that's okay because the happy people make the unhappy people go away. The unhappy people vanish. All their suffering just goes away. So I can torture and it's okay because what I'm making is worth it. So they have to make that argument that their silly, trivial pleasures in life are worth torturing somebody for. It's okay for me to torture somebody to have a lollipop or to have a nice little cupcake or whatever. You know, we can call her cupcake. You know, yes, I had cupcake last night. And it was beautiful, nice. And so now I can justify torturing things because I have something of such value that I can defend torture. And it's a bullshit argument is the point.
Giving permission or asking for permission from the unborn whether or not they want to be born. Like, what if they consented to all the risks? So consent is not the fucking issue. The issue is risk. And
So we have, once again, fundamental to mitigating risk and the imposition of risk is getting somebody's consent. If you get their consent, they have completely annihilated risk as an issue. They've accepted the risk. It's gone now. Now the imposition isn't an imposition anymore.
That's what the issue is, and I'm still an antinatalist, still an ethicist. I just start from the position of asking and requesting of the opposition.
So anyone who has to say, I'm still an antinatalist, right? You're almost like just ready to say, why would I ever say those words? Why would I have to ever reassure anyone? So his arguments are clearly attacking the foundations of the argument, which is there is something value consequential taking place, and there's no justification for it. And there's no way to get the justification for it. And so he is arguing against antinatalism because he's arguing against one of the most basic functions of the act. The act is, I know what's best for you. That's what the human race is doing. They're saying, I know it's good for you to be born. When they can't say that, they have no defense for saying that. Because as antinatalists, we know, no, the price is way too high. It's cost way too much money. You went into the store and you got totally ripped off. Okay, what you're carrying out isn't worth what you left behind. The fucking one sea turtle is not worth the 10,000 dead ones.
If they would be okay with their future progeny experiencing X, or possibly experiencing X, ultimately. I go into depth with all these things in other videos. Not going to go and do that right now, but you get the gist of it. Yes,
and they will argue it is, and that's the whole point of the argument. Is really the fact is they have to defend the imposing of the risk. They know it's there. They have to defend it, and the only way they can justify it is to greatly overvalue their experience and their personal luck in life. The fact that they were born in a place that isn't shitty, and they did have better parents, and they did have this and all the advantages they have, and they did have good enough genetics to survive to even have babies. So they're sitting on their high ground and talking about how it's worth it. The slaves like where they are. So they're just people living in the mansion, and they're just saying, no, all those dark people like doing that kind of shit, and it's good enough. Even if they're a little bit uncomfortable, our comfort is so much more important.
can sort through the things through that mechanism. But putting forward consent or imposition, or the imposition, as the asshole in the title of this video has put forward many times in the past.
Okay, right. So anyway, there's no, in my opinion, there's just no logical defense by not understanding these 5 words are connected. So there's just no reason to not understand how imposition. What are you imposing? Well, if it's a risk, if I'm certain it's not a risk, I know it's a good present, then imposition is fine, right? But if there's any doubt, this is a real problem, imposing. And what do you need? You need justification. How do you get justification? Well, consent is the easiest and most certain way to get it. And if you can't get that, then you need some kind of certainty that it's all going to be okay. And you can't get that either.
Gets completely debunked very easily through the mechanism that I just conveyed. No one has really isolated and highlighted it in quite as clear of a way as I just did.
Oh, I'm sorry. That didn't happen.
So again, you'd be in double standard, which is funny that this guy in the title also thinks he understands what a fucking double standard is.
So again, he's saying there's something double standard because I say you can't get consent. You can't do it. It's not possible. That I've committed a logical fallacy of some kind. No, I haven't. And it's exactly what I've stated. You can't get consent. I've never said you have to go get consent from the unborn. In any other context, then if that's the only thing you got, then you're going to have to some way, I don't even suggest that, right? So what's the argument? There's no argument. You can't get the consent. That's the argument. And theoretically, if they were in some purgatory or some place, the unborn, well, theoretically, the obligation would be to ask them, do you want to play this drawing straw game? You know, and when you get the short straw, you're going to have ALS. And if you get the long straw, you'll have this delusional idea that you're having some sort of charmed, wonderful life. Do you want to play this game? Do you want to risk it? But you can't do any of that. Never have I suggested there's any other alternative. Then you can't do it. You can't get consent. I've never said anything other than that. Well, anyway, I've already... I mean, it's amazing that this has gone on for 2 months over an argument that is unassailable. The connection between these words is unassailable. It cannot be argued that there isn't a clear connection between these words.
Doesn't. He's been performing one for 10 fucking years. And then it's also, even if granted past this, it's begging the question fallacy. And you don't have to grant it past this. You don't have to grant past this opening statement. You don't have to grant past this opening statement. It's the most brutal form of contradiction you could possibly be in a double standard.
What the fuck did he just say? You don't have to grant pass? What? Slow it down so I can figure out what the fuck that shit was.
You don't have to grant past this opening statement.
You don't have to grant past this. You don't have to grant past this opening statement. What the fuck does that mean?
Don't have to grant past this opening statement.
You don't have to grant past the opening statement. What the fuck is that? What are you? What?
It's the most brutal form of contradiction you could possibly be in a double standard. It's akin in the same department as claiming that someone else is a racist because of their skin color, so because of their race, like white guilt.
Well, where did that come from? Well, so now you're going to say white guilt. So because you're white and you have a connection to a bunch of ancestors who are white and may have participated in some act of bigotry, you shouldn't feel any remorse or any connection at all to that act. So because I'm an American, I shouldn't take any responsibility for the fact that, unfortunately, a lot of atrocities were committed in the creation of our country. Just a fact. Every country has done it somehow or other, right? They're all guilty of it, but it's a fact, and we shouldn't feel anything. We shouldn't be honest and acknowledge that some toes were stepped on. Yeah, I think we should probably. It's fair enough. Now, whether we should be compensating the modern victims who are 2%, that race, well, yeah, that might be silly.
That type of thing that was happening a couple months ago on the far left. a lot. It's the same type of contradiction as that.
No, it's that snorting cocaine problem. Yeah, cocaine problem, no doubt. That's why he has to put ads in the damn videos to pay for his cocaine.
To try to perform consistency or something, but this is just after we grant their implications, and they're still lunatics. They just don't think about any of these things, and then they claim to be thinking about them all the time, and it really irritates.
Well, I guess, look, people being wrong is bad, but people who are wrong when they know it, you know, they're making accusations they know they can't defend. He's made accusations he can't defend. If he could defend them, he'd be defending them with something called a quote.
You know, and so it is lunacy to think that you're going to have some sort of other thing that somehow someone that isn't going to have it, but they're thinking about it more, and they've been conveying it more and talking about it more, and you're just disregarding basically every single thing that they're saying, and they're just sitting there patiently going through all of your shit. Like, let's not.
Yeah, like somebody should do this. What is this gibberish? Well, we'll just jump ahead. See if he gets a little bit more.
Possibility of consent. So if you're going to put forward the
So he keeps doing it. So an hour and a half to keep remaking the same argument based on a completely false, fake, phony, lie premise. A premise that's a fucking lie.
Possibility of consent. Impossible and consent are not the same thing, so you isolate the word consent, and the value is placed on consent, and you aren't valuing their consent because you can't get their consent from them. Period.
Now, so again, he misses the point. The only value consent has is the fact that you can get it, and it mitigates against the risk, and that's just a fact. It's the easiest way to mitigate risk. And in common law, it's existed for almost ever as a way of avoiding being responsible. Yes, that's it. You're not responsible for something's fate, okay, when they've consented to play by those rules.
Okay, so now moving on to the next thing in summary of Gary's next shit talk, because he does a lot of this shit talking thing.
Well, we'll speed this up. So again, these people who I should debate with somebody this fucking obnoxiously rude. What would I debate? Again, how big a fucking asshole are you? You know, I mean, there's nothing to debate. How big a menace, a blight, a piece of shit, a weasel, a lying sack of shit are you? That's the only thing I want to debate about superhuman douche.
And he just sort of is a hobo that shit talks from a basement. That's his whole repertoire, his whole job now.
So again, this all started with that statement. Again, I don't, you know, fine. You know, your impression is your impression. So I fought back by saying, I think you're a pudgy, girly man with a fake beard. You know, like you got to beard up because you're too much of a pussy without it. You know, you're like one of those women haters who has to wear a beard. Like you're too stupid to figure out most chicks hate that shit. Like most. You know, most don't have any use for that crap. Dumbass. And look, if I was gay, frankly, I'd also have the same opinion. So you lose everywhere. In every way. You're just saying, I'm a loser, beard. I have to hide my face. I mean, it's just, what does it look like? Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Get in bum fight.
So now he wants to get into some kind of personal this and that. So he calls me hobo. I call him booby man. And then he'll come back with something. I'll go back with something. I'll go, you know, what's the point of that? Oh, that's right. There's no fucking point. But let's understand who fucking started it. That guy did. Fact. Absolute fact.
He just got in a bum fight with a bunch of other bums that were on that Discord thing. Then I predicted it was going to happen. I was like, man, there's going to be a bum fight. For sure. There's going to be a horrible bum fight. There's going to be a horrible lunatic bum fight. And
whatever. And you were having your little interaction with other people who got man boobs. You know, your little crew of tubbies.
Intelligent don't write things down, and people allow them to get away with not writing down the arguments and sussing through the arguments.
Oh, sussing again. It's just cringe.
when all I'm sitting here doing is just asking us to request of others' values and find out whether or not they are okay with those values being contradicted in the future, or whether they're okay with those values not being contradicted in the future.
Whatever that makes any sense at all. I mean, clearly people are of the opinion, okay, that their happiness is worth somebody else's trauma. I mean, clearly that's the whole mission of capitalism, basically, is to exploit the fuck out of other people, take advantage, screw them over, fine print on a contract, any kind of way to exploit their ignorance or their desperation. I mean, so clearly that's a common human thing. They're okay with that. That's the way the world should work. There should be winners for seldom legitimate reasons and losers for seldom legitimate reasons. They like this silly competition thing, most people, and that's the thing they have to understand, that it's like liking slavery. It's like saying it's okay with you to be born on the other side of the fence. You don't mind being one of those people next time. So next round, you'll wake up popping out of not so beautiful a vagina, and that's okay with you. Well, it's clearly not okay with me. I can get it. Okay, yeah, that I don't want to do this average thing. No, thank you. I don't want to be the average sea turtle that never sees like 15 days of life. You know, that just sees hardship, gruel, fight, and then finally get ripped to pieces and die. Yeah, I don't want to bother with that. Thank you.
Are not okay with those values being contradicted in the future is what I should have said. So yeah, why don't we have more people doing that, requesting of that, and then we would have a much faster, more rapid spread of the ideology and the...
Well, frankly, you're not doing it any favors at all. You can't be perceived from anybody reasonable as anything but a menace to the cause.
Because I do think ultimately that the ideas being conveyed here are coherent. It appears, at least it's noticeable, and it's just that they're not being portrayed in a coherent way. So, yeah, we're going to continue to press forward here. Again, there's probably...
Press forward with what? You're just going to keep lying about other people. Okay, great. Yeah, and assholes will keep showing up to participate in your what new lies did you make up this week show.
Intelligent. Yeah, there's numerous other ones as well. There's just a bunch of add-on attacks. And people are, baby man, Trump supporter. Yeah, these all make perfect sense in rebuttal to the argument that I made about, you being an objection and not objection about over consent, when you're putting forward the impossibility of consent. And impossible and consent don't mean the same things, and they aren't justified by the same things. So what you're implying is that you're saying that there's value for this consent thing, and then you're not getting the consent of the other person.
So again, like I have some obligation to get the consent to not do anything. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to impose anything. I'm going to avoid imposing, period. I have to get consent not to impose. No, I don't. Yeah, no, you don't have to get consent to do nothing. You have to get consent to do something, and the something carries risk, and that's the only argument that's reasonable here. There's no obligation for me to play God in any other sense than to clean up God's mess. If there's a mess, I have an obligation to clean it up, to do something about it. I don't have an obligation to create a universe and to create things in it because those things are going to be happy. By his ideology, what he's preaching right here is if I could imagine making a good universe, like it had a net good somehow, right? It's like somehow it produced something that was good in and of itself, which is impossible. Yes, I can't imagine such a thing, but if I could imagine such a thing, I'd have an obligation to spend my time making the good universes. Yeah, no, I wouldn't. No.
It's a horrible double standard, you dumb cunts. All right. Just as dumb as the fucking people that are saying that your people are racists because of their skin color. That's just as dumb as doing...
All right, so again, it's to him, it's the same thing. Getting somebody's consent to gamble with their money is the same thing as getting their consent not to gamble with their money. So I should go over to my neighbor's house and make sure, well, you conceded that you didn't want me to steal your money and go gambling in Las Vegas with it, right? I have your consent not to take your money and gamble, right? Ludicrous. All right. More than enough. Well, let's go for the last little bit.
Okay, so moving on from there. It goes from funny to irritating, right? Because it is irritating, but it's also funny that this shit is able to happen.
Yes, it's irritating that this shit is able to happen, that you aren't properly labeled the menace by anyone has any affection for the cause of the destruction of the life infestation on planet Earth. Anyone who has any sympathy with the idea that the torturing for no good reason has to stop shouldn't be interacting with this fucking pile of shit. All right. So again, if somebody wishes to, if this asshole has some sort of argument, you want to sit there and have me respond to it, well, put it in some sort of concise, rational form. If all you can do is include in it a bunch of, again, slanderous accusations against my personal character or my behavior or anything, then fuck you. I haven't got any obligation to engage in that. So make a rational argument or fuck you. All right, enough said. So till the next time and such. Had to be done now and then, right? So I guess every couple of months I'll reiterate what I think should be obvious to anybody with any shred of integrity as a human being. Liars suck. And this guy's a fucking liar.